G'day and welcome to another episode of Kiwi Car Life. And sorry, but I'm a bit of a VQ hater. While they do make a pretty commendable amount of power, in my mind they just don't sound very good, and they're generally fitted to some of Nissan's ugliest and poorest built cars, namely the Nissan 350Z. In many ways it's kind of a Japanese muscle car. Not especially well built, but it's got a big powerful engine and rear wheel drive. The Skyline that I rebuilt all last year, even once finished, I just found it to be a little bit of a pig to drive, so much so that even a Subaru Legacy with a much smaller engine was faster around Manfield. And a number of years ago I reviewed an automatic Nissan 350Z, which was a pretty lackluster drive with that 5-speed auto. But this, I've been assured, is the finest that the VQ era of Nissan has to offer. A manual Nissan 350Z with the higher revving version of the VQ35 and the track pack with the improved suspension and Brembo brakes. And so we're going to see if my opinion will change driving the best that Nissan had to offer from the early 2000s. Amazingly, I was shocked to find out that this is an original colour. I assumed it was a wrap as soon as I laid eyes on it, but no, this is actually an anniversary edition, and this was the colour that it came with. In some lights it looks purple, in others it looks gold. It probably wouldn't be my first choice of colour, but it's certainly very unique. And there it is, the VQ35 HR. While it may sound like a trumpet, there's no denying that this 3.5 litre double cam, double variable valve timing V6 makes an impressive amount of power. It's got 228 kilowatt or 306 horsepower, similar numbers to the latest Civic Type R, and 363 newton meters of torque. Naturally, it goes through a close ratio 6-speed manual transmission to the rear wheels with a limited slip differential, just how it should be. There's no turbochargers to get in the way. It revs all the way to 7,200 RPM. So while I may not be a fan of the sound, the engine, on paper at least, certainly makes more than enough to consider this a proper sports car. The interior, I must say, has surprised me. I think it's definitely helped by the fact that this is a very tidy example and is one of the highest spec 350Zs that you can get. The red and black quilted leather seats on this one is a bit of an interesting design choice, but the quality of the materials, I must say, is pretty decent. The steering wheel is a bit of an odd shape. I feel like the two upper spokes are higher than most other cars, but the leather again does feel nice, and it gives you a good view of the gauges in front of you with that 7,000 RPM red line. I like too that it has 3 separate gauges there in the middle, one that can show a variety of different things, and then your oil pressure, which is useful if you are driving this on track, and a voltmeter. The center stack of this has always been probably the worst part about it. All the climate control knobs just feel kind of average, and I just feel that there's a distinct lack of buttons that just kind of makes all 350Zs feel like they're the base model. And the rest of the interior is pretty much completely barren. But the driving position is good, the transmission feels absolutely excellent, really easy to find all the gears, and just has a snickety, notchy feel between all the gears. That's great. Boot space is pretty much completely taken up by an enormous subwoofer for your tunes, and there are no back seats to speak of, so compared with like a BRZ, this is definitely a lot more impractical, but then again it is also a lot faster. Gauges, steering wheel, seats and transmission are pretty good, but the rest of it, you're just going to have to accept that you're buying an early 2000s Nissan and it's never going to blow you away with its interior build quality. Driving the Nissan 350Z. Okay, I've got to admit, this one has got a really nice exhaust on it, and it actually sounds quite good. Still very raspy, but oh yeah, it's not bad, eh? And it's a nice amount of power where it's not ridiculously quick, but certainly fast enough to, you know, get you up to speed on the motorway and certainly have a bit of fun. How's the handling? Let's take a look. Steering feel is good. You can tell exactly what the front end is doing. Oh yeah. And the LSD works flawlessly to put power down. Certainly compared with my Skyline, That was one of the big frustrations I had with that car, was that, you know, on corner exit, it's got all the power, but it just can't use it, because as soon as you leave the corner like now and put your foot down, where this predictably steps out, the Skyline would just have one wheel going. It was unpredictable, it wouldn't do what you expected, whereas this is just great. Foot down, oh yeah, all the power goes straight to the road. I do find the clutch to be very vague and kind of hard to use, but when you start to get on the power of it, then when you're just hammering through gears, then it's perfectly fine. But the engine I'm certainly impressed by. It makes a nice amount of power where it's not just gonna light up the back end all the time. It's predictable, naturally aspirated power, but it's certainly more than enough to have a bit of fun. Transmission is a joy to use. It feels really great. And yeah, it's very trumpety, especially in the kind of mid-range like now. It very much has that very warbly sort of sound, which is a bit of a love-hate relationship, I suppose. But I guess the thing that surprised me the most is the handling, because, you know, I always saw the 350Z as being a bit of a muscle car, and you kind of expect it to sort of fall apart in the corners, but no. Oh, it's great. LSD is so fun and makes it being rear-wheel drive well and truly worth it. The interior, as I expected, isn't really all that great by today's standards anymore. The engine is certainly powerful, but yeah, definitely has a slightly controversial tone to it. But everything else about it, the throttle response, the steering feel, the transmission is lovely. The clutch isn't the easiest to use, but when you're just hammering it, then it works just fine. And honestly, I'm impressed. I think a manual 370Z would actually be a really great car. They sorted out a lot of the interior issues. In my mind, it looks a lot better on the outside, and it has even more power. So provided everything else is the same, I think a manual 370Z would be a really, really great car. This, again, it's probably like a 7 out of 10 car. I drive this and I go, yeah, it's nice, makes a decent amount of power, it's good fun, but I don't necessarily desperately want one, you know. But that said, if you're in the market for something that's reasonably affordable, that makes a pretty decent amount of power and will certainly be reliable, this is, a pretty darn good option, man. And so with that, I will leave you with one last VQ scream, and I will look forward to seeing you again next time.